There, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. And I'm really excited because I want to follow up on what I was talking about yesterday. That's always really fun. It kind of makes two podcasts out of one, which is really, it's a bonus for you and it's a bonus for me. So let's enjoy this, okay? I was thinking last night after, as you all know, most of you have probably heard me say before that I don't script these podcast episodes. I mean, my process is essentially just to, I'm going to show you everybody on YouTube. My process is simply to just sort of make a couple of little notes, right? So here's showing up. Here's a little note about what I'm going to say. I'm not surprised that none of you can read my handwriting. I can barely read it, but it's very unscripted is the point, right? So a lot of times after I get done with the podcast, I think of a few other things that I wanted to say. So, such is the case today. But actually, this is really kind of very apropos, if you will, of the message. Not just the message that I'm trying to deliver here, but the overall message of mindfulness, or let's say it echoes the essence of mindfulness, right? Which is the essence of returning. Okay, that's the really important part of understanding mindfulness and practicing mindfulness too, right? As we know, mindfulness is not just something that we learn and understand. It's something that we got to practice. We got to keep doing it because in the end, it's a skill, right? In the same way, anybody who's ever, been in a meeting with me has probably heard me say, or even in a presentation, has probably heard me say, use the analogy of a bicycle, right? You could read 100 books about bicycles, right? And how to ride them, what they're made of, everything else. You don't know how to ride the bike until you get on the bike and try to ride the bike, and that's just how it goes, right? So there's two ways in which this, in which we learn anything, right? We learn through an understanding of the concepts, right? We read a book, we watch videos, we listen to podcasts, we go to classes, this kind of thing. But then there's another circuit of the brain, another circuitry of the brain that in which we learn through the doing, through the direct experience, right? And so the reason I bring this up is because, or I always bring this up because it's very important to recognize or to understand that mindfulness is a practice, not just a concept, okay? But the reason I bring the returning up and why I say that this is so essential to what, mindfulness is all about, right? Is that, yes, with mindfulness, as we know, as I've said here before, there's three essential skills I talked about just the other day that we're training with mindfulness, right? The skills that we're developing under the umbrella of what we call mindfulness are focused attention, open awareness, and kind intention. Okay, kindness, loving kindness, universal positive regard, however you want to call that, okay? But the idea here is that when we focus our attention on something, right, it's important to recognize that that's not, it's not some rigid, focus, some kind of like tying our attention down and making it, stay exactly where it is, because that is antithetical to what the mind does and how it works, right? The mind is meant to wander. The most beautiful things happen when our minds wander sometimes, not always. But the idea here is that it's never about being rigidly attentive to something. It's about the sort of, pendulum, if you will, of recognizing when we're not focused and then returning to that focus, right? Now, one of the ways that this process is echoed, right, this idea of returning, right, is that, so even with something like acceptance, like we talked about the other day, right, yesterday's podcast, in fact, was about acceptance, right, acceptance 101, the very basic concept, right, is the idea of just accepting that this is what's happening right now. As much as I might want something else, as much as I might not want this is what is happening. Right. And that's the first step of being able to, sort of work with our lives and be buoyant in our lives. Right. Is the ability to accept that right here, right now, this is it. This is what's happening. Now, that alone, right? You can't think of that as something like, some kind of rigid adherence to something, right? Because it doesn't work that way. You're going to accept it, and then you're going to find yourself in a place of non-acceptance at some point. And the practice then is to recognize, oh my gosh, I'm not accepting reality right now. I'm resisting reality. And in this resistance, I'm experiencing suffering. So therefore, I simply return to the acceptance. I often like to look at it like kind of like you're painting a wall. Right. So in your house, right, you put the coat of paint on and it looks beautiful. Right. It's like, oh, my gosh, it looks so much better. It's so rich looking and deep and even and beautiful. Right. And then you go into the kitchen, you get yourself a glass of water and you putz around for a few minutes. You come back and now the wall is drying, but it's now looks splotchy and streaky and it's no longer beautiful like it was a minute ago. So do we say, oh, well, I guess I got to move, right? Or do I tear the wall down? Or do I just give up on it and say, oh, well, I'm never going to have a nice wall in my house again? No, we simply return to it and paint it again. And sometimes we have to do that again and again, a couple of times, with a wall, hopefully not more than 2 or 3 times, depending on what color you're covering up, I guess. But anyway, the point is that's what life is. Life is a series of returning and readdressing and recontextualizing and reaccepting what is happening. And so I wanted to, I told you yesterday this story about my very first sort of, big lesson on acceptance when the cook in the bagel shop I used to own didn't show up one day and I was left alone. And I, as I mentioned yesterday, like the dialogue in my mind was, in the beginning was, this cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. But at some point, I realized that this is happening. and I have but 2 choices. I can either close the door and throw all the customers out and destroy my business or do significant damage to my business, or I can accept that this is what's happening and I can do my best to just, work through it, right? And so as I talk about returning, and last night I was, kind of thinking about some of this stuff again, like how, man, I should have said this, I should have said that. But last night, as I was thinking over some of this stuff, it occurred to me that there's another story. It's really another very important lesson that I learned about acceptance that was maybe a couple of years after the story that I told you yesterday, which is, again, reminiscent or an echo of that idea of returning, right? Because when I, you learn the lesson, right? You learn the lesson, you live your life, you kind of, not that you forget the lesson, but, the lesson just like a wall, a freshly painted wall, the lesson sort of, integrates into everything else in your mind and your brain and your nervous system. And then, some parts of it sort of maybe get, dislocated and just, hard to find, right? So you learn the lesson again. And again, and again, and again. And so a couple of years after that time when my cook didn't show up, I was at a little concert, a little, not like a big, arena concert. I don't go to those anymore, thank you. I like to go to little clubs and stuff. But anyway, I was just seeing this band that's one of a band that I really like. And it's the band is called J-Rad, Joe Russo's Almost Dead. And it's Almost Dead is because they are basically a Grateful Dead cover band, but not really. Like, they're not playing Grateful Dead songs to sound like the Grateful Dead playing the Grateful Dead songs. They're playing Grateful Dead songs almost as if they were the Grateful Dead back in like the 60s and 70s, right? Like with the real, creative energy and the real improvisational, approach and this, it's a really, and it's also, of course, a Dead scene. So like all, I run into people I haven't seen in, 20 years, like, and then there's all kinds of, recreational things going on. It's a lot of fun. And so it turns out that I have a cousin who is a friend of one of the guys in the band. And I never knew that until he said, hey, you want to go to a J-Rad show? I was like, yeah, and he's like, you free? I was like, free, of course. So anyway, so we wound up going to a lot of these shows together. It was a really beautiful time in my life. Just for like a year or two, we wound up going to a whole bunch of shows that they played right in the area, and at one of these shows, I may or may not have had some special mushrooms in my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm not saying either way, but I was certainly in a very exploratory mood in my mind, right? As I was listening to the show. And there's one song that the Grateful Dead wrote really later on in their period of presence in our world, right? Which is like in the mid '80s. They wrote this song that's called "Throwing Stones," and like a lot of other, like some of the Grateful Dead songs, it's got some political connotations and some political undertones to it, right? And there's one, and I'm going to put a link to the song in my, I'll find the YouTube video, the music video for the song, and I'll put the link in the comments here, in the description here, so that you can maybe check the song out if you haven't heard it before. It's really a great song. And one of the lines in the song was always a real resonant line for me, because it kind of talks to addiction, which is something I've had a very interesting and embattled relationship with in my life. And so the line goes, "Need that cash to feed that Jones." Right now, I know it sounds very obscure, out of context. You're going to hear the whole song, and it'll make more sense then. But that line itself. So the word Jones, right? For any of you who don't know this, right? It's not just someone's last name. It's not just the last, the brand name of a popular breakfast sausage from when I was a kid. But rather, it's a term used to describe the need that an addict has for his or her fix, right? In more modern parlance, the term dope sick is something that you might hear, right? Where you're actually getting ill because you don't have this drug to which you are addicted, right? And it specifically applies to heroin use, right? And so when I actually had a friend who, back in the day when we used to go to a lot of Dead shows in the 80s, his nickname was Jonesy, right? Because he had some real, monsters in his closet and stuff. And he, was, somebody who couldn't stop using heroin, right? And so anytime he didn't have his heroin, by the time it started wearing off, you just get very antsy, you get very, irritable, you get very, and eventually you start getting sick, right? And so anyway, that's the Jones, right? And that's what this song is referring to, right? That when the addict has his Jones, he needs cash, because he's got to get money so that he can go buy the stuff that he needs to fix that Jones, to feed that Jones, right? As the song says, need that cash to feed that Jones, right? Now, I want to pause for a second and just reflect and just commemorate the truth that there's millions of people out there suffering in addiction, and it's truly it's a horrible thing to go through, and I just want to take a moment in compassion, and I ask you to share that compassion with me, and maybe we all just maybe we just wish that all people who are in the grips and the throes of addiction, may they find peace, may they find an end to their suffering. Can you share that with me? Thank you very much. I really appreciate you doing that with me. So anyway, there I am at I think it was at the venue in Port Chester called the Capitol Theater. That's what it was. I'm having a hard time locating that in the neurons of my brain here. But in the Capitol Theater, and of course, we always would get there early and get right up front, and and again, he knew the guys in the band, and so I got to know them a little, and so it was like this real cool experience. But anyway, there I am standing there, in a particularly open and an exploratory mood of the mind, and I'm right under the guy who's singing this part. There's two different singers of the songs, which is true about the Grateful Dead too, and the guy who's singing this song happens to be like right by where we're standing, right? And when he said that line, need that cash to feed that Jones. Now, that's a line that I'd heard hundreds and hundreds, I mean, perhaps thousands of times, okay, that's gone through my mind thousands of times. But there was something about the way I heard it in that moment. And in that moment, I realized that it kind of goes both ways, if you will, right? Like, yes, you need the cash to feed the Jones. But if we recontextualize this concept, because I think that's really, in their metaphoric, beautiful writing, they're applying this to something larger than just the people in the world who are addicted to opioids, right, and heroin, right, which is that, it's a Jones that we have, that we feel we need something, right, that if we get something, it's going to make us happy, or it's going to bring some level of happiness or well-being to us. And nothing could be further from the truth, right? And this is what acceptance really is also about, right? Acceptance is about the fact that, you don't need anything else to be happy. You have everything you need. You are living, you are breathing. You are, now again, yes, there is suffering in poverty, or there is suffering in addiction, there is suffering in illness. Yes, absolutely. But, and sure, there's, and I don't want to speak for people who have a terminal illness, or people who are stuck in the grips of addiction, which they, spend their whole lives feeding that addiction. I don't want to speak for them. But I do want to say that for most people in the world, we have what we need, right? We have, clothing, we have water and food and heating and cooling and safety and convenience. Most of us have all these things. And so, but even, even aside from that, and that's putting it into more of a societal thing, but the idea is that when we get into the belief that we need something in order for us to be happy, right, then we just get stuck on a treadmill for the rest of our lives, right? There's always something else, because what happens is it's not the thing itself that you really, it's not the thing itself that you're striving for. It's the striving that is the process of the mind, right? And that's an unskilled process of the mind, right? Which is to say that we get stuck in this delusion of belief that I need something else to make me happy. And the problem is, again, that once you get that thing, it's not like, oh, okay, now I'm happy, right? Because I got this thing. No, at a certain point, that same process is going to look for the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And so as I was standing there, rather, because it was, on the floor, standing in front of the stage, I had this vision came to my mind. This voice inside of me said something that was so wise and so just amazing, and it was so simple. That is, you need no cash if you have no Jones, right? You can look at it both ways. And if I can live without the need to strive and to get stuff that in order to make me happy, if I can just accept that, no, this is what I have right now, and be happy within what I have right now, well, then I don't need to strive for anything. And so this is a form of acceptance as well. It's also illustrative of a very important aspect of mindfulness, which I guess I'll save for another episode here, which is as Jon Kabat-Zinn actually has 7 attitudes. I think he actually revised it to 9 attitudes at some point. But when I originally read it, it was 7 attitudes of mindfulness. And one of these attitudes, I'm not going to try to name them all because I won't get them, I promise you. It's been a long time since I've revisited that. I'll try it after I'm off here. I'll write them down, but I don't want to do this in front of you because it's going to take a minute. But anyway, one of these attitudes is non-striving, which is to say exactly what I was just talking about, right? That your happiness is not out there in something you can attain or some place you can get to or some life you can construct. That's not the life that you have now. That is not where your happiness is. Your happiness is as much reliant on accepting what you have as it is on getting anything new. And again, this is a process of the mind. This has nothing to do with, oh, yeah, it's easy for you to say because you have a nice car. If you could see my car right now, I mean, this thing is absolutely falling apart. Half the time, I'm like, is this even safe for me to drive my kids around in? You know, my son, my daughter won't even get in the car. It's horrendous. You know, the clothes that I wear, I mean, I don't have anything that's less than a few years old. The only thing I spend money on is getting my hockey skates sharpened and buying tape so that I can play hockey. You know, I mean, you know, it's not. I'm not saying this from a place of abundance or you know that, oh, it's easy for me because I have everything I want. No, I mean, there's lots of things that I wish I had. Lots of things. I haven't been able to watch the last 2 games of the NHL playoffs because I'm not paying for a cable service that I'm not going to use. It's just silly. I'd rather buy my kids something that they could use, like a pair of shoes or something, right? And yes, it just so happens that, and this is where it kind of comes in, right? Because, you know, I am in a place right now where I am not giving up everything in order to make enough money to buy a bunch of stuff that I don't need. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong if you're in a place, in a position where you make a lot of money and you have a lot of material goods in that. That's not what I'm saying. It is possible to have that stuff without striving for it, okay? But the question is, are you striving for it? Are you grasping for it? Are you making your life about the attainment of these, you know, these material goods or these circumstantial situations in which you think are going to make you happy? Because that's not what's making you happy. If you're happy with all that stuff, you're happy in spite of all that stuff, not because of all that stuff. Again, it's not like having all that stuff is making you unhappy, not necessarily. And it's not the stuff itself. Again, it's not the stuff. It's the striving for the stuff that makes you unhappy. Because again, that becomes just a treadmill that goes on forever. Because the minute you get the new thing, there comes a point where it's no longer making you happy. And therefore, you have to strive for the next new thing. And then the next new thing. And then the next. And then the next. And then the next. And, sooner or later, like me, you're going to realize that that years, decades have gone by in which you are constantly striving for all this stuff. And here you are, unhappy. And I don't want to see you unhappy. I don't want you to be unhappy. I want you to be happy, and you can be happy. You can be happy by being, and again, it's not by saying, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to have a crappy life. No, not at all. I mean, aspirations are not striving, right? They don't have to be, right? But it's, again, about accepting moment by moment. And this is also the thing. I'm getting stuck right now in the idea of thinking about these big macro sort of economic things in our lives, right? But it really works on a very small level. That's where you do the work, is what I should say, is on a small level. You don't think about like, oh man, so what do I do? Get rid of all my furniture and get rid of my car and move into a smaller house? No. No. Start by, and this is one practice that I love to teach to my students and clients, one day a week, right? Do something for breakfast that you would not normally do. Right. So, and it can be as simple as if you always order a vanilla chai latte, order a caramel chai latte one day, or a peppermint or something like that. Right. And even if you don't like it, just do it anyway and try it and accept that this is what it is. Right. That today I do not have the coffee that I normally drink, but I'm going to do and of course, yeah, I mean, if it's something that's like repulsive to you, like, oh my gosh, I can't stand this. Well, yeah, no, don't punish yourself. Don't torture yourself with it, right? But try to accept it and try to see, like, can I get some enjoyment out of this coffee anyway? Even though it's not the thing that I thought I needed to make me happy this morning. Okay? When we work on these little tiny things in our lives, this changes the process. And then the big stuff takes care of itself. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. And then one day you're going to be sitting in a concert and something that the singer says is going to make you realize the concept and the value of acceptance the same way that it did with me. The reason why that happened is because I was working on accepting all these little things in my life. And that's when the aha moment, the eureka moment came up. And the same can happen for you. Okay. So when we're talking about non-striving, talk in the tiniest of terms, right? And this can also, many of you know that I have a history of weight issues, right? I've struggled with obesity my whole life, and it's a constant struggle. It's not something that's ever going to be over for me, right? And so, but what I realized that a lot of my, the training of my eating habits has everything to do with this same striving, right? Like that it's okay to be a little hungry at 9 o'clock at night and not eat 3 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, right? It's okay. You will survive. I will survive. That's another Dead song. And so when we practice on those little moments when at 9 o'clock we're thinking, oh man, I got to get myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because I'm so hungry, in that moment you say, wait, no. Can I accept that I'm a little hungry right now? Knowing that it's not starvation, it's not malnutrition, it's not something dangerous for me. It's just my feeling of my body right now. And again, if you're someone who gets a migraine because you don't eat, then eat. I mean, I'm not saying then use something else, right? But look for these little places in our lives where we can change the idea of need, okay? Because you need no cash if you got no Jones. All right, folks. I hope that made sense to you. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. Wishing you well. I'll be back again soon. Perhaps tomorrow. We'll see. But hey, I hope you all have a great day. And I wish you well. And if you have any questions about any of this, please let me know. Okay, because I am here to support you. Okay, I really love that you're all out there, hearing this and watching these videos or listening to the podcast. And I'm here to be part of this process with you. Okay, so if there's something that I'm saying that is like either an aha moment or a WTF moment, I invite you to get in touch. Okay, all right, everybody. And the way you get in touch is art@artburnscoaching.com. That's the easiest way. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Wish you well. Bye-bye.